Hello and welcome back to WJ Live, powered by the Western Journal. Once again, this episode is going to be sponsored by our friends over at Patriot Depot. Our friends at patriotdepot.com have been supporting us and partnering with us for a very long time. And if you want to check them out, if you want your supplies for the conservative revolution, you reach right out to them at patriotdepot.com. You're going to get 20% off everything in the store with the coupon code WJLive at patriotdepot.com this week only. So thank you once again to our friends at Patriot Depot. I'm Andrew J. Shasha, a reporter at the Western Journal. George, frequent co-host, likes to refer to me as the Cracker Jack reporter at the Western Journal.
Yes.
To my left, I'm joined by Michael Austin, who is the crack reporter at the Western Journal.
Howdy.
And on my right, by Joe Setyen, the deputy managing editor of Story at the Western Journal. Today, we have a special guest for you. We're going to be having a conversation with Quisha King. She is a former regional engagement coordinator, for Black Voices for Trump. She is the founder of King Consulting, and she is a contributor of opinion here at the Western Journal. Quisha, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Now, for members of our audience who have not seen your op-eds yet, who are not familiar with you yet, can you just give us kind of a breakdown of your background and who you are to them?
Sure. So I got into this, I was sort of pushed into this by God, I always say, and was having a conversation about Black Lives Matter and started to really do some research. This was right after the 2016 election. And what I started researching, I found Dr. Thomas Sowell and Walter Williams and Milton Friedman, and it just blew my mind. And I felt like I had to alert, the Black community, like, wait a minute, everything that we've been hearing is totally wrong. And so it just sort of led me on this journey to get into politics and talk about a lot of the issues that we hear in the Black community on a regular basis, and really become an advocate for things that will honestly help us as a community, instead of the rhetoric that's being touted, by the media and by certain people and certain politicians. So I felt it was my duty as an American to let people know what was really going on.
Excellent. And so how does your work at King Consulting and in your time at Black Voices for Trump, what did that work look like, and how did that kind of forward, the points that you're trying to kind of voice to the Black community and show to folks who haven't really seen this kind of conservative messaging before? What did that work look like?
Sure. So with as a regional engagement coordinator for Black Voices for Trump, I organized events to help inform the Black community. I mean, they weren't always just Black folks. There was just people around Jacksonville, around in the region, and to really inform them on what was going on and what President Trump represented and the policies that he was pushing, the America First policies, and that includes everyone. And unfortunately, that message was not getting to the Black community. So what we did with Black Voices for Trump in Jacksonville and in Florida particular, but in Jacksonville, we had the most Black people go from Democrat to Republican. So I'm really proud of the work that we were able to do here in Jacksonville and in the region with Black Voices for Trump. And with King Consulting, we have, I'm sure you guys have seen, there's this whole talk of like a lot of diversity and inclusion and all, it's so pervasive. And what they do is basically they get in front of a group of people, especially like at corporations and nonprofits, and they say, okay, if you're Black, you're oppressed. And if you are white, you're a white supremacist. They don't get to know you. They don't, they lump everybody together, and they assign these oppressive or supremacist titles to you regardless of who you are as an individual. And so I felt that there needed to be a different narrative. So we have a social and cultural advocacy program where we go into corporations and different organizations, and we show them real ways that they can help in the community if that's the promise that they want to make. And we help them source different pools of talent and talk about apprenticeships and things like that, things that would really help all communities, not just going in there and telling them if you have a certain skin color that you are oppressed or a white supremacist. And then also with King Consulting, we do marketing and we help politicians campaign for their next candidacies. So if you want to get involved in politics and you need someone to help you create your messaging for the Black community, that's another specialty that we have.
Excellent. I'm so glad you kind of brought up, we talk on the show quite a bit about this kind of haves versus have-nots paradigm, this, the oppressor class versus the oppressed class on the social justice left. They talk about this ad nauseum, and they also speak kind of and pat themselves on the back extensively about just the way that, they have given a voice to the Black community on the left that we on the right just simply haven't. I think it's very interesting, however, and we talked a couple weeks ago about the case of Chike Uzigbunam. If you're not familiar, there was a case at Georgia Gwinnett College, a Black student who was preaching Christian message on campus at a public university, had his First Amendment rights violated. The Supreme Court actually ruled overwhelmingly in his favor in recent weeks, saying that those rights were in fact violated. I think it's so interesting, however, that when we kind of get at this conversation, the left is wanting to give Black voices kind of more room to breathe and more of a voice, but only if you agree with that narrative. Everyone else gets othered. Everyone else gets lumped in with the white oppressor class that you were talking about. And so can you just talk about where you've seen that and how exactly are folks on the conservative side and on the Christian side supposed to kind of cut through that hypocrisy?
Yeah, I mean, it's again pervasive. We see it a lot. If you don't subscribe to, if you're Black, like Joe Biden said, if you don't vote for me, you're not Black, meaning that you have to think a certain way, you have to behave a certain way, you have to fall in line with what we say. Otherwise, you're not Black. And I mean, it's a silly, it's nonsense. And the fact that we have to be, as Black people, we're supposed to be relegated to one way to think, it's insulting, honestly. And I'm so happy that that gentleman was able to take his case to the Supreme Court and win, because we need more instances of us standing up for ourselves and saying, no, we're not going to take it. I don't mean to quote the song, but that's honestly what we have to do. And I tell a lot of white conservatives as well, and any other groups of people, when someone is trying to put this title on you that doesn't belong to you, push back. Like, don't apologize for being, you had nothing to do with how you were born. And for people to accuse you of something like racism or something like that, or white supremacy, when they have no idea who you are, they haven't bothered to give you the opportunity to know you or anything like that, and they just put these labels on you. Stand up for yourself and say, no, that's not who I am, and I'm not, I'm not backing down.
And in just a second here, we actually want to kind of move discussion over to your op-eds. But real quickly before that, I just kind of want to ask, is that message, are you seeing it resonate? Are we seeing kind of a Black conservative revolution that, was kind of touted under the Trump administration and with the growth in the 2020 election? Are we seeing that revolution? Are you seeing it resonate on the ground where you're working?
I absolutely do. I believe that the establishment GOP and the establishment left, they need to really wake up and see that Black Americans, we're not taking it anymore. We have been voting, Democrat for years, and we have now seen, especially, in the last couple of weeks, that the policies that they push, they're not good for anybody, honestly. And certainly not for underserved communities, Black communities, or Hispanic communities. And yet, I absolutely see a resurgence of Black conservatives coming around and making their voices heard. Back in the day, there was only just a few, but now we have so many different voices. Yes, we have Candace Owens, and there's Sonny Johnson, and we have Maj Toure. And I mean, we don't all agree on every single thing, but the fact of the matter is that we're here and we're voicing our opinions, and they don't typically align with the left. They don't.
And
And I am so proud to see that.
And Quisha, you've done a really great job yourself of kind of adding to those voices, especially with the op-eds you've written for us. They've been fantastic. I really loved the one you wrote last month about Biden has essentially canceled the 1964 Civil Rights Act, and that's with all of the equity and inclusivity policies that end up actually just judging people on the basis of their skin color. But more recently, what I was hoping you would want to talk about with us is your op-ed about how the media is psychologically abusing black people and racially discriminating against white people. Now, could you just, for those who haven't read your op-ed yet, what do you mean by that? How is the media psychologically abusing black people?
Yeah, so I was just taking a step back and looking at how all of these uprisings came, and just looking back over the years and seeing where all of this came from. And the media has been such a divisive and, in my opinion, evil purveyor of this narrative, that they only seem to highlight the stories of when there is a white police officer or a white individual and a black person. And it totally neglects those stories of white individuals who've had the same types of interactions with the police. They never highlight those stories. And when you are constantly fed a narrative that's you see a black person being kneeled on or a black person being shot or whatever the story is of the day, when you see that constantly being portrayed online and in the news, on television, it is it's a psychological abuse, because you are then deemed to believe that this is happening only to black people. And it's not. It's not only happening to black people. And it's an unfair and it's a cruel way to give the news when it's something as tragic as watching George Floyd die. That I don't care what color you are. That's not something that I believe as human. We're not meant to see stuff like that. But when we see it, it does something to you. You can't help but to be moved by those by what you see. And when that news is only given to highlight the tragedies of one community, it's wrong. And it is, in my opinion, it is a type of abuse, because when you constantly hear those things over and over and over again, you're going to believe them, and then it becomes a reality. And so that's what I based the article on. I was just looking around and seeing, where is all of this coming from? And you see it from the media, and I would say I call them the race hustlers. So you see it from both.
Yeah, and speaking to the race hustlers, you mentioned how in your op-ed how Black Lives Matter has accumulated $90 million in donations, and we've seen that this sort of race hustling industry is a really profitable one over the years. We had Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson. Those guys are still around. They've profited for decades, and then nowadays you have people like Ibram X. Kendi, Robin DiAngelo, all these people that are making so much money off of just kind of putting out these ideas that don't have first off, they're not going to work. They're not going to help a lot of these communities that do need help. And second off, they don't really take any time to put any scientific analysis or any good rigor behind a lot of the claims that they're making. What do you think about a lot of these race hustlers that are gaining prominence, like Ibram X. Kendi, like Robin DiAngelo? Do you think that they are legitimately trying to help the black community, or do you think they've sort of been incentivized by this industry to just kind of play the part of okay, I'm the savior that's going to help everyone by sharing these horrible ideas?
I think there's two groups. I think
Hmm.
there are the groups of people who honestly, truly believe that we're being hunted down like
Hmm.
dogs. I think LeBron said that, LeBron James. And I don't know if he truly, I don't believe he truly believes that.
Yeah.
But you have the people who truly believe it because of what they see in the media and what's
Hmm.
all, what's being told, over decades of time. And then you have the people like the Al Sharptons and in my opinion, the Obamas, those people who have risen to heights of incredible success here in America. And somehow they have managed to escape the white supremacist and the oppressive white person and rise to the heights of American wealth and elite. And but when they are in front of a group of other black people, somehow you're just not gonna make it. You just don't have what it takes because you're oppressed. All of you are oppressed. I they look at themselves, they can make it, but you can't. So I think there's two types of people. I think there's the people who use it as a, as we say, as a come up, and then there's a group of people who honestly truly believe that this is happening, and those people tend to be just the more regular everyday people. But the ones who are making a profit, they absolutely know, in my opinion,
Hmm.
that you're not oppressed and you can do any, this is the best country for you to do anything and be anything you want to be. Black people are the most successful black Americans, excuse me, are the most successful black people in the entire world. So how are, if you can't make it here, then where are you going to go?
Right. And then the last thing I wanted to get your thoughts on before we move on to our next topic is, I wrote a column a few weeks ago talking about how I believe the Republican Party has sort of failed black communities. And what I meant by that was not failure, they haven't failed them in terms of, the types of policies that we've sought after, but rather in terms of outreach. And it seems to me that a lot of establishment conservatives, a lot of establishment Republicans, they haven't taken the time to actually reach out to these communities, to put in the day-to-day work to actually show them, hey, we have something we can offer you guys. And I spoke to some people that are engaged in a lot of civil outreach, and they're very disappointed, and they're often left just really disappointed with the fact that they're not willing to put in the time or the money. They'd rather just put the money in the pockets of establishment Republican consultants and all this stuff, when really we need to be getting into these communities because, first off, we're going to need those votes going forward. And second off, we can actually help a lot of these communities in ways that the Democrats are just doing the exact opposite. So, as someone that does work with outreach and reaching out to black communities, do you think sort of the establishment Republicans, do you think they've failed at outreach and reaching out to minority communities?
I absolutely 100% do.
Yeah.
Even when we were campaigning, we had great people who had wonderful ideas. And when we would work those ideas up the chain, we would get so far and then it would just fall flat. And we were just constantly wondering, like, what's going on? Why aren't why aren't they trying the things that we know would work? We're on the ground, we're seeing it. I think that the establishment GOP is just as tone deaf as the establishment left. They have no clue of
Mm.
what is really going on the ground. And here's a little something that I noticed in the GOP. They defer to there are black people in the GOP that are higher up in the ranks. They defer to those people for advice, basically, and it's understandable. They're like, okay, well, these are they're black and they're here, and this is where we can get our ideas. Unfortunately, they themselves have become really distant from what's really going on the ground, and so it's just a mixed communication all the way around. And I am very vocal to my local party here about making sure that we do not neglect these communities when we run our candidates, because we have the better message. We just don't put it out there in the right,
Right.
in the best ways. We have a great message. We have a track record of decades of success. And if we could properly get that message into the Black community, Hispanic communities, like we saw with President Trump, we would win. We would start to chip away at the stronghold that the Democrats have. I'm a little optimistic, and so I'm hoping that they learn and see how hard President Trump fought, and what he was not going to take, and him fighting for our communities. And I hope they take the lead and they don't let all that hard work that we've done and President Trump has led. I hope they don't let it go to waste.
And just to tack onto that really briefly before we move along, and Joe and I had the pleasure of speaking to some folks at CPAC. Was that last month now? I got to speak with Maj Toure, who you mentioned earlier, before his panel. We've seen that, for all its faults, and I would have to agree with those faults, the Republican Party and the kind of conservative elite and the old line conservatives are starting to wake up to what you're talking about. I mean, that panel, was given... that panel was raised up, and there have been more voices and more diversity of thought presented even in the Black community at events like this. Is that a step in the right direction? Is that not enough? Can you just speak to that a little bit?
I absolutely think it's a step in the right direction. I think that the panel was great. And like I said, no one is going to agree with every single thing that one person says, and that's fine. But the message is getting out there and letting people, okay, let them see, okay, well, I agree with this, not so much that. I agree with this, not so much that. But a different narrative. If I can just speak for a second. When I came into the conservative movement, Republican Party, I had never heard these things. Now, I consider myself an educated woman. I consider myself to be sort of smart, kind of, at least a little bit. But I had never heard, I never knew that the Democrats were the party of the KKK. I never knew that the Democrats had voted against every single civil rights act bill ever signed into Congress. With the last one, they overwhelmingly still voted against it. But I had never heard these things. And they get to walk around as if they are they're fighting for Black folks and Hispanics and underserved communities. And it's like, no, you haven't. You never have, and you still don't. But we're not getting that. We're not hearing that message. And it's even harder to find that information now with suppression and people trying to remove stories and blogs and information off of the internet. So it's getting harder for people to even find that information. And so, yes, I certainly believe that it is so necessary for us to for CPAC and the GOP and all of those types of events to keep putting Black people on there who have aligned themselves with the message. And it's only going to help the party. It's only going to help the party. We're not always all buttoned up and all, we don't all look the same, regardless of your color, we're all different, so it behooves the party to put more voices. We need more voices, not less.
Shifting gears a little bit, because I want to talk about this recent story that the Western Journal ran about Columbia University in New York City, and they are holding separate graduation ceremonies next month based on race, income, sexual orientation. So I believe, just reading from the story, they have Latinx graduation, they have a lower income graduation, all these kind of divided up racially and otherwise profiled. I just want to get your take on that, sort of, because I think that's something that we see often from the left and in this kind of culture of inclusivity, sort of like what you were saying, Michael. What's the point of that? And like what good does it do?
It does absolutely no good. Like I said before, the left loves to pretend like they are fighting for Black people or Hispanics or minority communities, when in fact they are just as obsessed with race as they were in the early 1800s. I mean, this is exactly the same thing that they did before. They judge you on your superficial. It is just a superficial way to look at people. Your skin color does not define you. There is so much more to me, to all of you, to people watching than our, what skin we happen to be born in. I mean, we have our own dreams, goals, our potential, our education. There's so much more to human beings than the skin we wear, but the left likes to diminish you down to something as superficial as your skin color and let that be the determining factor of if you can succeed in society or if you're a failure or if you're a white supremacist. And they can tack on a title to you and put you in the box that you're ascribed to. And I just think it's demoralizing. It is insulting. It's evil. We were not meant to be looked at on the basis of our skin color. I mean, we all know the quote from Martin Luther King: Be judged by your character, not the content of your character, not your skin color." But it's like they don't care about that. They want to pick apart who you are, put you in a box, and then tell you where to go. And I just refuse. And if we get to know each other a little bit more, you guys will see how fervently I am opposed to that, because it is exactly the type of thing that we fought against in this country for with having a bloody civil war. I mean, how dare you separate us by race? I would be, if that ever happened to like anybody in my family or anybody close to me, I would be on the front lines screaming like, no, this is not right. That's not the way we should be handling things in America in 2021.
And I guess as Christians, as children of God, do you see any problem with having people identify, kind of glorifying your identity in things that are other than Christ? I think we can all say, right, we can be proud of our heritage, but is there a danger in exalting that above, our identity as Christians? I would say for Christian people.
Yeah.
Joe, I am so happy you asked me that question. So one of the first things that started me on this journey was God spoke to me and he said, your skin color has become an idol. That blew me away. And I think anyone who idolizes exterior, superficial things, you will feel you will start to grow in pride, and you can hear it in the language: white pride, gay pride, Black pride, all of these things. God does not like pride. You become prideful in these exterior, fleshly things where that becomes how you see yourself and not who you are in Christ. And it was a very humbling moment for me, where I needed to realize that I was identifying more in my skin color and not my identity in Christ. And when when that was stripped from me, the shackles off of my mind just fell away. It was a true freedom. When I refocused my identity in Christ, it was like a weight of decades of oppression, mental oppression, that just lifted off of me. It was a transformative moment in my life that I am so grateful to God that he humbled me and he showed me the error of my ways. And I really try to press that upon people where I see that they're uplifting their skin color or some exterior part of themselves that doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, all of that is going in the dirt and your soul has no color. And that is what's important.
Well, excellent. We really appreciate, Quisha, you getting down to such a kind of fundamental part of your journey. If our audience wants to keep up with you for the rest of your journey, how can they be following you? How can they keep up with you?
Yes, I'm on Twitter at I'm Quisha. And you can follow me on Instagram at I think it's I am Quisha. And I'm on Facebook too. Just look me up, Quisha King. So I'm there.
Excellent. Well, with that, we are just about out of time at WJ Live, powered by the Western Journal, sponsored by Patriot Depot. Just a few moments, just a few items before we sign off here. As usual, WJ Live is going to be active every day of the week or every day of the work week, Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific. We are going to be available anywhere where you find audio content. So if you're watching on YouTube and you want to catch us on a strictly audio platform, because maybe you don't want to see the ugly mugs that are being presented behind this desk every day, you might want to check us out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeart, or anywhere else where you get audio content. If you're not on YouTube, but you want to watch and you want to see these beautiful faces behind the desk, if you want to see our wonderful guests, wherever they may be located, you can check us out on YouTube at WJ Live. You're going to want to hit the subscribe button. They should be pulling that up on the screen below. Hit that red subscribe button. After that, a bell is going to pop up to the right. You're going to want to hit that bell as well. It's going to make sure that every time that we go live, you are notified. It's in your inbox. You're being updated when we are updating you. And the big tech overlords are not getting in the way of that, no matter what they may try. Maybe there's going to be a third button one of these days, but until that time, subscribe. Hit the bell. Other than that, if you would like to keep up with our journalism at the Western Journal, if you want to read op-eds like Quisha's op-eds that we discussed here, if you want to read our original content, you want to support that content, go to westernjournal.com/join. You can actually sign up for a variety of our subscription models. You can get behind the paywall with an ad-light model, and you may be getting some exclusive content in the coming weeks from the original features team. With that, thank you again for Quisha King for being with us as our special guest. For Michael Austin, for Joe Setyan, I've been Andrew J. Shasha, and this has been WJ Live. Thank you so much for watching.
The Western Journal has rolled out a brand new subscription model designed specifically for readers like you, who want the unvarnished truth that the establishment media won't tell you. Our multi-tiered plans give you exactly what you want, and help us fight fake news during this, the most important election of our lives. Become a subscriber to the Western Journal today and unlock exclusive features you won't find anywhere else. It's easy. Just follow the prompts in this video to join us in equipping readers